No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live episode number 226. And breaking right now, Rupert Lowe has been cleared by the CPS after a vexatious police complaint by Reform UK chairman Zia Yusuf over hurty words, plunging the party into a shock new crisis and deepening civil war.
I know for a fact that there's quite a lot of people in the leadership.
It's so good that he'll instantly come onto the show as soon as anything
brought
big
in
happens.
in the first place.
Absolutely, and the Reform Party...
because he can trust you.
It can, but Reform have stood up against this kind of complaints culture and the weaponisation of the law and the Equality Act, and yet that was used against him.
Meanwhile, Rupert himself has launched his strongest, most stinging attack yet on Farage, describing him as a viper and coward. Programming note, Rupert Lowe will be here on Outspoken tomorrow, while Ben Habib has promised a new rival party is coming soon.
This country needs an honest, decent, pro-British political force which is actually going to act with integrity, without fear, without favour, and deliver for this country. That cannot be Reform UK under the leadership of Zia Yusuf and Nigel Farage. A new political force is needed. Watch this space.
In my digest next, I'll reveal why Zia Yusuf must go for Nigel Farage to get Reform UK back on track. Then I'm joined by Father Calvin Robinson. Also coming up on the show today, David Lammy accused of assault in France over a £590 taxi fare when the Foreign Secretary and his wife were on a visit with the King. Gary Lineker has been slammed as the Kanye West of football as Katie Hopkins and Julia Hartley Brewer weigh in amid increasing pressure on the BBC to sack the Match of the Day host. And disaster for Meghan Markle as her popularity hits new lows as Michael Knowles of the Daily Wire reveals she's ripped off another part of her pitch. Then, in the uncancelled after show on Substack, cannot wait for this, Lady Colin Campbell, she's unleashed on it all. Sign up to watch at www.outspoken.live. Of course, we'll reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass at the end of the show, and two of your nominees for Union Jackass involved in our big stories of the day. Let me show you them. Gary Lineker, nominated by Karen Hankey for his anti-Semitic Instagram post. Marina Purkis, nominated by the Griff Report for saying a lot of people are quite happy with immigration and that they don't mind. And Zia Yusuf, nominated by Civil Defence UK 1. Rupert Lowe is guilty of nothing, they say, as the CPS drop the case altogether. Big questions to answer, Zia. Okay, going to be a big show. Really interesting one. Lots of breaking news, by the way, as well, because Gary Lineker has now responded. I'm going to tell you what he has had to say and why it's completely unacceptable later in the show. But now, let's go. Reform UK chairman Zia Yusuf must resign or be sacked by Nigel Farage. That is the only acceptable outcome after Rupert Lowe was today cleared by the CPS with the 67-year-old businessman's blemish-free criminal record intact. There has got to be consequences for engaging in the sort of vexatious lawfare that has been employed by the hard left against those of us on the right against one of your own. I mean, how can a party that claims to be against the weaponization of woke be taken seriously if it wastes the valuable time of the police and CPS by attempting to get its best performing MP jailed for hurty words, when, by the way, don't know if you've noticed this afternoon, we literally have no space in those jails. And by the way, imprisoning Rupert Lowe was absolutely what Yusuf was attempting to do when he reported the Great Yarmouth MP in a bid to destroy his political career and reputation just weeks after Elon Musk had endorsed him to lead reform and days after an interview with the Daily Mail in which he provided some, I would argue, tepid criticism of Nigel Farage's leadership style. Now, before the local elections, I reported that Farage had turned on Yusuf over the decision to go to the cops, with the leader of Reform telling senior party figures that his under-fire chairman would have to go. Yusuf responded immaturely, lashing out on me at X for my honest reporting, daring to call me a liar. Well, is he going to make that same smear against Andrew Pearce and GB News Today, his paymasters, who confirmed my reporting when announcing the news that Rupert had been cleared?
MP.
I know for a fact that there's quite a lot of people in the leadership of Reform thought it was insane that the police were brought in the first place.
Absolutely, and the Reform Party...
Politics can be a rough old business.
It can,
and a bit of shouting,
but Reform have stood up
one.
against this kind of complaints culture and the weaponisation of the law and the Equality Act, and yet that was used against him. But
really,
anyway, that's big news.
It is big news. Yeah. I did the interview with Rupert Lowe in the Mail, which triggered the big fallout with other Reform MPs. I think he's a very impressive man. Yeah,
well, he'll no doubt start his campaigns again.
Now, Farage is right, by the way, to recognise the mistake, which has plunged Reform UK into a devastating civil war, trampling over the feelings of its base of loyal members, many of whom feel discarded. There was understandable disgust when I confirmed Rupert's claim that senior party figures had been spreading a malicious and untrue rumour that he was suffering from dementia. Now, announcing the CPS decision today, the head of the Special Crime Division said, following a thorough and detailed review of the evidence in relation to an allegation of threats, not even death threats, just threats, we have decided that no criminal charges should be brought against a sitting MP. Having considered a number of witness statements, we have concluded that there is insufficient evidence to provide a realistic prospect of conviction. What a waste of everyone's time. How totally irresponsible when you look at what's going on in the streets. And while GB News wants that to be the end of the story, given Nigel Farage has ordered his employer to stop covering the story, its political editor Christopher Hope soon realised that would be wishful thinking.
I've just got off the phone to Rupert Lowe. He is currently on a boat off Great Yarmouth inspecting wind farms with RWE, which is a German energy company, on the way to Scroby Sands. I said to him, is this now over, Rupert Lowe, this civil war which has caused such damage to both, I think, Reform UK, Nigel Farage, yourself and others, people who support Reform UK don't want to see these battles being fought amongst themselves rather than taking on the established parties. He says it is not, and he has issued a 16-page letter before action against Zia Yusuf, the party chairman, Lee Anderson, the Reform's chief whip, and Reform UK corporately itself. And he says that unless there's a response by tomorrow, he will issue formal legal action in the High Court for defamation against those three people. This is the end of part of this saga, but by no means the end of it at all.
Fascinating, Chris. That's Chris Hope.
Now, within minutes, Rupert had released a blistering statement on X. It is worth me sharing it with you in full. He wrote, "This was not normal political infighting. It was a sinister attempt to weaponize the criminal justice system against me, putting not just my political future, but my liberty at risk. All because I dared to raise constructive criticisms of Nigel Farage, stood firm on deporting illegal migrants, and pushed for reform to be run democratically, not as a vehicle to stroke one man's ego." How did reform respond? With a brutal smear campaign. For the sin of asking legitimate questions about the party's direction, policies, and leadership, I was vilified and targeted. I am ashamed to have shared a parliamentary platform with them, ashamed to have trusted them, ashamed to have called them friends. Farage is no leader. He is a coward and a viper. I feel deeply embarrassed that I ever thought he was the man to lead. It's my view that the police process was weaponized to silence a party colleague who raised reasonable concerns. If Farage were ever to control the vast power of the British state, I believe he would not hesitate to do this to his adversaries, what they have tried to do to me. With real power, I fear he would wield that immense responsibility to crush dissent, as he has done time and again over the years. Smearing my innocent staff in a pathetic attempt to attack me was disgusting, alongside briefings to journalists from senior reform figures suggesting I had dementia, the lowest, vilest tactics I have seen in my 67 years. They are not fit to lead. They are not fit to be MPs. Please listen when I say this. For the good of our country, Nigel Farage must never be Prime Minister. To the millions of decent reform supporters, you must do what you believe is right. I personally could not remain in an organisation led by such men. They do not deserve your time, your support, your energy, your money, or your vote. I urge you to do what you think is right. When the time soon comes, we will work together to advance a political movement that is credible, professional, decent, democratic, and honest. There will very soon be an alternative to the rotten leadership of reform. And to those of you who have supported me during this incredibly difficult period, thank you. I have been touched by your messages of kindness. Without your support and without my social media platforms, I would have been buried by their smears. I truly mean it. Thank you. You'll be hearing a lot more from me very soon. Rupert. Wow. Blistering statement. What's been fascinating, by the way, is to see how many dishonest players there are in the media over this, even the independent media space, who would not report that statement. GB News would not read it all. In fact, GB News this afternoon had Lee Anderson on as a guest with Martin Daubney. Not one question was asked of him about this story. So there are propagandists for reform. And by the way, I know lots of you would want me to be a propagandist for reform, but that isn't how I operate. I am an independent journalist. Rupert Lowe's fighting talk was soon backed up by Reform UK's former deputy leader, Ben Habib. Watch.
Almost invariably, instead of thanking them for their services and commending them for what they've done, the leadership of reform has sought to ruin their reputations. But with Rupert Lowe, what they did was go one step further. They used the very kind of lawfare against which they should be standing to try not just to ruin Rupert Lowe, but to have him incarcerated. That, at every single level, should be abhorrent to anyone of any political persuasion. But it should be particularly concerning for those of us who had put our hopes in reform, because if this party and its leadership does not have a moral compass and does not have a political philosophy that's built on integrity, it cannot be trusted in any shape or form to deliver this country from the very dangerous position in which this country now finds itself, in part put there by the kind of lawfare that they tried to use against Rupert Lowe. This country needs an honest, decent, pro-British political force which is actually going to act with integrity, without fear, without favour, and deliver for this country. That cannot be Reform UK under the leadership of Zia Yusuf and Nigel Farage. A new political force is needed. Watch this space.
Now, ironically, before the decision was announced today, Yusuf had been tweeting an interview in which he had proclaimed that our, quote, justice system is broken, and if you complain about petty theft, you're ignored. So I had to point out to him, the justice system is also broken because people like you waste the time of the police and the CPS by making spurious complaints about hurty words. You can never complain about this again, given you're now the poster boy for lawfare against respectable figures on the right. Of course, I do understand that many Reform UK supporters want this story to simply go away. I get it, right? You believe Farage is the best chance to save the country as Prime Minister. You want coverage of his party to reflect that. Now, even though I voted for reform, I was the first to predict that Farage will become PM. I stress that I make no apologies or excuses for covering the party fairly. I'm not a shill or a propagandist, and as a victim of lawfare myself by the left, I just couldn't stand idly by and pretend that what happened to Rupert was acceptable. but I will offer fair coverage to Reform UK as a journalist. And I think you have to start judging who is offering fair coverage and who is simply a propagandist or someone who, can I be completely frank with you, wants to become a Reform UK staffer or Reform UK MP or potentially even a Reform UK cabinet minister. That's fine, by the way. I just think they need to be open about what their motivations are. But I think Reform needs to also think about the damage that it has caused itself by losing Rupert Lowe, a man willing to have these types of unfiltered exchanges in the MSM.
The NHS exists to provide the best possible care to patients. Now, some of those patients will feel more comfortable speaking in their native language.
I don't care.
Right?
I have no interest in that.
Well, fine.
They should speak English. They live in England, they should speak English.
He's a loss, and he will be again for whichever organisation he decides to join next. Some fascinating reaction to this from people who I respect today. Ex-Reform UK London mayoral candidate Howard Cox posted, CPS is not taking Reform Zia Yusuf's pathetic infantile allegations further against Rupert Lowe. Must be grounds for Rupert to place a legal defamation response now, or at the very least a public apology from Nigel and Zia. Connor Tomlinson concluded, in March, Nigel Farage wrote in The Telegraph that Reform has acted responsibly over Rupert Lowe. This is now provably untrue. You are an honourable and honest man, Rupert, and an asset to any movement you belong to. I am glad your inevitable exoneration has arrived. None of this needs to have happened. Calling the police was a needless escalation. I hope you receive an apology. And as is so often the case, it's very often the responses from you, members of the public, that resonate most with me. And I want to share with you a post on X from Scott Lewis, which really struck a chord with me. I don't know Scott Lewis, but I followed him after this. He wrote, they tried to bury Rupert Lowe. Now they've created a monster. The case is dropped. The chains are off. And what walks free is not a man, but a mission. You don't survive a political crucifixion and come back the same. You come back to burn the system that lit the match. Reform wanted silence. What they unleashed is the man who will save Britain and bury them in the same sentence. Brace yourself. Rupert's rise is just the beginning. Now, Father Calvin Robinson is here. Father Calvin, great to see you. I thought that post on X from Scott Lewis, who is clearly a brilliant writer, by the way, well done, Scott, really resonates with people like yourself, people like me, who have seen what happens, how difficult it is when the system does try to crucify us, to shut us down, to silence us. And in this case, okay, sure, it was Reform UK that was doing the silencing, but that doesn't make it acceptable just because they're an organisation of the right, does it?
Actually, that makes it even worse, because Reform UK is supposed to be fighting against the establishment. And as some of us have been saying all along, it seems they want to be a part of the establishment. And they're copying the mechanisms, the tools, the weapons that the establishment uses to silence, to censor, and to shut down opposition. That's not good. It's not healthy. If we want a right that is founded on British principles, that is just, that is different to the establishment, then Reform could stand up and be that right, but it has to operate in a different way. And when we've got people like Rupert Lowe, who everyone who knows him, everyone who's ever worked with him says he's a good guy, right? When you've got someone like that who's really storming the polls and becoming a favourite amongst the core voters with the base, when you've got someone like that who gets instantly shut down, attacked, lawfare used against them, you've got the police coming around, you've got his guns being taken away, you've got press releases left, right and centre, you've got Isabel Oakeshott sneering on TV, you've got Richard Tice sneering on TV, you've got Nigel Farage at every opportunity he can get, dragging Rupert's name through the mud. When we see that, it tells us that actually the right is no better than the left, and therefore why would we bother voting for them? And this is the problem. If Reform want to make a difference, if they want to offer a different approach, they've got to be different, quite literally, to everything else that we see around us. You know, the problem that we've had in Britain for so long is that the Labour Party and the Conservative Party seem indistinct from each other. And it's not just about their policies, because sometimes their policies are different. It's the way they act. It's the way they treat ordinary working class British folk. It's the way that they don't seem to care about the issues that most of us care about, and they don't treat people properly. And if Reform are going to become exactly like that, then they may as well just join the Conservative Party and or Labour. What is the point?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I find this difficult, though, Father Calvin. I'm not going to lie. And what upsets me, actually, is that I believe I've covered this case completely fairly, actually. I think I've always tried to present both sides, and I'm not one of these people, by the way, and I respect a lot of these people, Ben Habib, probably yourself, Father Calvin, lots of people who actually think Reform UK is definitely not the vehicle. I've never said that, right? I have never said that. But unfortunately, what I have seen over the course of this case, Father Calvin, is a lot of bullying and thuggish behaviour to try and silence people. And I'm really disgusted with GB News, because you're meant to be a news organisation. How can a story like this break today and you don't read out the full statement from Rupert Lowe? You've got Lee Anderson, who is the chief whip, who co-authored the statement with Zia Yusuf, which went out reporting that Rupert Lowe had been shopped to the cops, and you don't ask him anything of it. It's like you're not doing the right a favour if you simply act as propagandists.
Right. So the people that we know, love and respect and admire, the people who are supposedly on our side of fighting against the approved narrative, they want it so bad. They want Reform to be the opposition so bad that they're willing to overlook bad behaviour. That's part of the problem. That's part of the problem I tried to raise with Alex Phillips when we were on the panel together. That's part of the problem I know you've been trying to point out to Matthew Goodwin. Like, people who are supposed to be on the side of good overlooking bad because they need it so badly. That's not good. That's not helpful. We need to rise above all of this petty, as you call it, bullying. We on the right need to be better than this if we want to turn our country around and make it a better place for everyone to live. And we don't do that by covering up this bullying, by drinking the Kool-Aid of a party or the Kool-Aid of Nigel Farage and pretending like he's an innocent angel who can do no wrong. He is a human being. He makes mistakes, but he needs to be challenged on those mistakes and called out on them so he doesn't continue to make them. We all make mistakes and we all need friendly, critical feedback. And if Farage can't receive it because he can't handle it and he shuts people down, and the people around him won't receive it because they daren't acknowledge that he's doing anything wrong just in case the whole thing falls apart, then none of it's going to work. None of it makes any sense. And it's a great shame because we do need change. We absolutely do need change. But Reform cannot be it until they can get their act together.
Yeah, but that's the key point, isn't it? Until they get their act together, Father Calvin. And that's why I'm not going as far as Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe. I'm not prepared to say that there's no way Nigel Farage should ever be Prime Minister or anything like that. But what do you think of my call as a first step that Zia Yusuf has to resign or be sacked if Reform UK wants to move forward from this very, very ugly chapter?
I think it's a good first step that Mohammed Zia Yusuf should step down. He should have nothing to do with British politics. He shouldn't be involved in the first place. The fact that he got this instant promotion to chairman by dropping a few grand on Farage, again, doesn't shine a good light on the Reform Party. But you find yourself in a difficult position, Dan, because you are very fair and balanced on this, far more so than someone like me who can never vote Reform again. But you are trying to be balanced, and you will be attacked because of it from both sides, particularly the Reform camp right now, because again, they want everyone to be drinking the Kool-Aid. And you're not drinking the Kool-Aid. You're trying to offer them fair and balanced criticism. They won't like it.
No, they won't. And it's very interesting to me because I do think that there has to be true independent journalism in this country. And sometimes, unfortunately, that does mean exposing wrongdoing from your own side. But I find it shocking, Father Calvin, that people can't see that what happened was wrong. And so what my very, very strong suspicion is that they know it's wrong, but they're not prepared to tell you it's wrong. the public. And I hate that. I absolutely hate that. Just like I hate the cover-up over Slippery Starmer, because they're all talking about his private life, but they don't believe you deserve to know. And so I would have had a lot more respect for Matt Goodwin, for example, if he had come out and said quite clearly, this was disgusting what happened. I do support reform, but I cannot support the actions of reporting one of our top performing MPs to the police. And the thing is, I just say to all of those people who are involved in reform right now, if you don't stand up for this, it could be you next. And that was sort of our message at GB News, wasn't it? Because we've been through this. If they can do this to us, original loyal members of this channel, they could do it to you. But unfortunately, what you see happen in these cases, Calvin, is people don't tend to be brave. It tends to work. They tend to toe the line. They tend to self-censor, and it's really disappointing.
Well, it shows a lack of integrity. Like, I could never trust someone like, you know, if I've known Matt Goodwin for years, I could never trust him again, because I can see that he's in the midst of it all. He sees how corrupt it is. He sees the bullying. He sees the bad behavior, and he glosses over it. In fact, he worse than glosses over it. He attacks anyone that dares point it out. And that's exactly what Sir Keir Starmer does when we talk about grooming gangs, or we talk about 3 young British girls being killed. He would rather say, how dare you point that out, you racist, far-right bigots, than address the issue at hand, which is the important issue of girls being killed or girls being groomed and raped. This is exactly the same scenario that we're seeing in Reformed with the Kool-Aid drinkers. Of course, it's not the same cause, it's not the same issue, but it's the same scenario in that they brush over bad behavior, they brush over the dirt because they want to protect something that they see as more important, which is Nigel Farage and the Reform Party.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
Because their argument, though, which I do hear, is that saving the country is more important, but you only save the country if you allow great men like Rupert Lowe into your movement, because you're not going to save the country on your own as
the country is more important than the
personality cult. Indeed. But what happens now, Father Calvin, because we've got this rival movement, the Integrity Party, being set up by Ben Habib, doesn't that just risk dividing the right even further?
Yeah, it does. It does. Of course it does. All these parties on the right risk dividing the right, but there's no choice. There's no option at the moment. People want to do things properly, and I think it's quite right for Ben Habib to want to do it properly after seeing how poorly it's been done. No matter how much time and money he's sunk into reform, he couldn't shape it, couldn't help form it. So he's got no option but to form his own party, and we do need people to vote for. And perhaps in 3 or 4 years' time, whenever the next election is, they may be at a point in the relationship where they're able to have some kind of deal, some kind of pact where they won't stand against each other. Who knows? A lot can happen in politics. But even if they don't, I think he's absolutely right to make a stand. I wish more people would make a stand. But people shut this down and say, you're dividing, you're dividing, you're dividing. Well, what's the answer? Then none of us stand, and we just leave it to the worst people that are going to stand, and just leave it to them. And then we end up with more of the same that we've had over the last couple of decades.
Indeed. And what's quite interesting is we have just seen Isabel Oakeshott respond. You mentioned her earlier. I think it's worth pointing this out because she has basically become a sort of spokesperson for the Reform leadership. This is just in. She's written on X, I know the dying Tory party wishes it were true, but there is no row engulfing Reform. There is one embittered ex-member making a lot of noise. I think we've seen that voters don't care. Rupert has replied to that post saying, the Reform leadership tried to put me in prison on false allegations because I questioned your Messiah. So I'm sure you'll forgive me if I am a little embittered at your party's weaponization of woke lawfare. But Calvin, again, I'm like, it doesn't matter to me if it has impacted the polls or not. Sometimes in life, there's just right and wrong. Absolutely. And reporting someone to the police, trying to destroy their life, trying to destroy their reputation. Maybe people don't know what that's like until it happens to them. It has happened to me. It is disgusting. We cannot just stand by and watch that happen to someone who we respect, or actually someone we don't respect, an innocent person.
That is a very good point. It's happening to me right now. People are still smearing me as an anti-Semite. As we speak, press releases are going out. I won't address them because it's beneath me at this point. But people who haven't been through it just see it as on the periphery, and it's like, okay, so that person's been accused of whatever. But of course it affects you. And someone like Rupert Lowe, who's worked hard all his life to be a man of honour and man of integrity, is called what was he called, a misogynist and a bully and all these things that he wasn't. It's not nice to have your character smeared and discredited and your reputation damaged over falsehoods, over lies, over disinformation, misinformation, all of that stuff. And so you're absolutely right that it's just wrong, regardless of how it affects the polls. But of course, it does affect the polls. We've seen this. A lot of the Reform members are unhappy with the way Reform is acting. And yes, voters voted Reform in these local elections. But what if they're holding their nose and voting Reform because it's a local election? They know it doesn't really matter. When the general election comes around, they'll be thinking a lot more seriously about who they vote for. I don't think people like Isabel should take it for granted. And I certainly don't think she should be still sneering at Rupert Lowe and attacking him publicly. She shouldn't be doing any of this. She should leave that aside because it just makes them look bad. Because it is bad. Stop it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess all I'd say to Isabel is, how would you feel if they did that to Richard? How would they feel if they did that to your partner? You would stand by him and you would think that was very wrong. Wow. Our Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, is already the biggest embarrassment in British politics. And that really is saying something, right? But I mean, this is the man who went on Mastermind and said that Marie Antoinette won the Nobel Prize for Physics. He's the man that when the BBC reported on a previous papal conclave and the fact that black smoke was emerging, meaning that no pope had been chosen, he genuinely accused the corporation of being racist. He's the man who claimed that Donald Trump was a Nazi and now has to sit side by side with him, chumming up. And he's also a man who is so deeply unqualified to be in this position. He is a chancer and a grifter. And yet again, he is bringing shame on the United Kingdom today with a story that the mainstream media is barely touching. But you just know if this had been a Conservative minister, they would have been calling for him to go. So I'm going to take you through this very gross, sordid story that has just been revealed today about a taxi driver in France who says he was the victim of assault when David Lammy and his wife refused to pay a £590 fare after driving them from Italy to a French ski resort. Now, so many people are going to be thinking, what on earth is going on with this guy paying a £590 fare anyway, that no doubt he's going to charge back to us? And something doesn't smell right about this story. So let me take you through it. The driver said he collected Lammy and his artist wife on April the 10th at the town of Forlì near Bologna after they had accompanied King Charles and Queen Camilla on a 3-day state visit to Italy. But he alleges that Lammy became aggressive when asked for payment after he drove some 6 hours into the night to reach Flaine, a French ski resort in the Alps. The driver claimed Lammy, who did not identify himself, snatched the receipt from his hand when he said it was up to the passengers to pay €700 out of a €1,550 total fare, the rest of which was covered by a transfer service used to book the trip. When they allegedly refused to pay, the driver said he left them at their destination and drove to the local police station to lodge a complaint. But the office also told French media that Lammy and his wife are suing the driver for fraudulently removing luggage and cash, with the Foreign Office declaring today that the Foreign Secretary totally refutes the allegations made against him. So the driver specifically told the police, on the night of April the 10th to the 11th, I was the victim of assault and violence by members of a British embassy during an international transfer where they refused to pay me. Get Transfer, who used my services, was supposed to pay me the difference, €850. They stopped the payment, and on the spot, the customer snatched the receipt from my hands. It is a well-known fact when you want to write the trip off as an expense report later on. So this is fascinating, isn't it? Father Calvin Robinson, and I think something smells really wrong here. And at the end of the day, it's all well and good for the Foreign Secretary to try and turn on this French taxi driver. But if this had happened with a Conservative Party member, there would be serious questions about whether this assault had actually taken place.
Yeah, I'm still not entirely sure what's going on here. Is this a case of Lammy's trying to put more on the expenses than is due on the expenses, and that's why he got angry and this all kicked off? Or is like what's the motive behind this?
Well, that seems to be what the taxi driver is implying, because he snatched the receipt without handing over the cash. Now, the Foreign Office disputes that altogether. They say, we totally refute these allegations. The fare was paid in full. The Foreign Secretary and his wife are named as victims in this matter, and the driver has been charged with theft. As there is an ongoing legal process, it would be inappropriate to comment further. Now, that theft allegation, Father Calvin, seems to come from the fact that the driver went immediately to the police station. But my argument sorry, you come in.
I don't understand that either. It's like, so was he paid the full amount and then didn't give the change? But like, what was stolen?
Well, I guess Lammy's claiming that his luggage was stolen, but the driver is saying, I simply went to the police station to report that you hadn't paid the fare. The thing,
but there was a comment about cash as well, wasn't there? Is the allegation that the driver took cash out of the bag, or?
I don't know. I don't think so. From my reading of it, the allegation of theft is specifically in regards to the fact that the luggage went to the police station. But I guess if you look at, because obviously there are always two sides to a clash like this, but I would look at the macro of this, right? The wider point. And do you not think it's massively unbecoming for the Foreign Secretary of our country to be engaging in some sort of tit for tat with a French taxi driver who, by the way, has driven this guy for 6 hours in the night, right? Like, that's a really difficult thing. Lammy obviously believed the fare had been paid for. The taxi driver believed it hadn't been paid for. But you're the Foreign Secretary. You're a very well-paid man, and you've got lots of means to deal with this after the fact. So surely if he was at all a respectful character, which we know he's not, given that he's called Brexiteers like you and I Nazis in the past, but if he were a respectful character, surely what he would have done is just paid the fare, dealt with it politely, got an additional receipt, and then claimed back or got his staff to deal with it afterwards. Do you see what I mean? The fact that he's entered into a row over this, which the taxi driver claims to be assault, is just so gross and grim and immature, if nothing more.
Yeah, I suppose that is the issue, because I imagine they're probably both in the wrong. I've had plenty of French taxi drivers. They're not the nicest people in the world. So I imagine there was a dispute about who should be paying and how it should be a thing. He bothered with the expenses. And I know David Lammy is not the most reasonable chap in the world either. So they probably were both at fault. But for it to escalate to this point for the Home Secretary is embarrassing for the country. So you're absolutely right. He should have risen above it, just paid the man whatever he wanted to be paid to settle the amount there, chase it up on expenses later if necessary, if appropriate. But certainly for them to be at each other's throat about this is unbecoming of a Minister of State.
Totally. I totally agree. And I just think the absolute double standards over this, by the way, because Father Calvin, in the last administration, and in Boris Johnson's government, it didn't matter, by the way, if there was any proof. If an allegation was made, the media would jump all over it, and you just don't see the same standards here. Like, if this were a Tory Prime Minister, he would have been asked, like Keir Starmer would be asked about it constantly.
Corruption scandal, Home Office.
100%. Expenses scandal. And it just infuriates me. Like, look, the point is there is a story here. And unless the mainstream media actually do their job and constantly ask and hammer the politicians who are involved about this, but we've seen time and again that just doesn't happen in these cases. The mainstream media just wants to be in the tank for Labour. And I think there is something really seedy and scummy about this cabinet, because we've also seen claims that Ed Miliband, the Environment Secretary, the Energy Secretary, is spending huge amounts of money on flights and everything. And I just think everything they said when they got into government was all talk, and they have proven to be the worst form of champagne socialists, because actually, why on earth was he taking a £1,000 taxi anyway? Like, you could hire a car. Like, I just think they spend our money like it's going out of fashion, and they know that they're going to get away with it when they hauled the Tories over the coals for far, far less.
Isn't this what Margaret Thatcher said is the problem with socialism, in that eventually you run out of other people's money to spend? And this is what the Labour government are doing. They're just splashing our money around like it's their own. No, worse than it's their own. Like, they don't care about whose money it is, because they forget it's ours. It's yours and my money, taxpayers' money. We always knew they'd be hypocrites. We knew that Labour Party would be hypocrites when they got into government. The problem is, as you've pointed out, that the media are also hypocrites. The media should be the ones pointing out these scandals and this corruption and all this expenses and everything that they've pointed out with the Conservatives. Why are they not doing the same with the Labour? That's the shame of it all, because we knew Labour were going to be a horrible government, but we kind of, to some extent, expected better of the press.
Well, I think we did, but I think we should, but I didn't necessarily expect it, if you see what I mean. But I feel like David Lammy is just such a disaster in this job of Foreign Secretary anyway. But they're all hypocrites, as far as I'm concerned. They are all hypocrites. I mean, Ed Miliband trying to bankrupt us over nut zero, spending £40,000 on flights. I just think it's completely disgraceful on so many levels. I also thought, by the way, that one of Starmer's responses in PMQs was disgraceful too. This is on the whole question of immigration and his language over immigration. Now, by the way, I'm absolutely not supporting what Liz Saville-Roberts, the leader of Plaid Cymru, said, because she is, one of those people on the hard left. But I'm interested to know what you thought of Starmer's very dismissive response.
Saville-Roberts.
This Prime Minister once spoke of compassion and dignity for migrants and for defending free movement. Now he talks of islands of strangers and taking back control. Somebody here has to call this out, Mr. Speaker. It seems the only principle he consistently defends is whichever he last heard in a focus group. So I ask him, is there any belief he holds which survives a week in Downing Street?
Yes, the belief that she talks rubbish. Mr. Speaker.
Now, Father Calvin, she had got him there, and I really looked closely. I found the reaction of the two women to either side of him fascinating. Rachel Reeves, totally on board, ridiculous, over-the-top, fake laugh, because she knows that her political future is tied to Starmer staying in number 10. Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, the woman who absolutely wants to replace him, she wasn't impressed by that answer, because the point is, Father Calvin, even though I don't agree with the politics of Plaid Cymru at all, at the end of the day, he has proven himself to be an empty vessel of a Prime Minister, and just dismissing other parties rather than actually trying to justify why you've had this total 180, I think shows what a scumbag he is.
Yeah, I saw this one this morning. A mutual friend of ours, Nick Dixon, tweeted it and said he likes the new edgier version of Sir Keir Starmer. I don't like that.
No, but the thing is, his rhetoric's fine. But I mean, look, if Keir Starmer was saying, okay, we're going to stop all immigration, and I'm going to take part in a Trump-style mass deportation program of the 2 million people who are here, then maybe I'd take him seriously. But the point is, he's all rhetoric, he's all talk, and he's zero action. Because, no one's even trying to suggest that these policies, Father Calvin, are going to get net migration to below 250,000. So it's a joke. There's still going to be this invasion of our country.
It's his attitude. And she had a very reasonable, very fair question right there. And I would have liked to have had an answer to it. I think the way he bats it off and dismisses her is problematic. I think it's rude, but I'm surprised people on his own bench didn't think it was misogynistic. But it's just not a good way for Parliament to be acting. And it is it's the playing up to the cameras, and I've said this for a long time now. I think the cameras in the House of Commons were a mistake, because I'd rather them be getting on with business than them showing up for us on social media, trying to get a bit of clickbait in order to make themselves look good. I don't want Sir Keir Starmer to try and be a comedian. I want him to fix, as you point out, the immigration problem. I want him to have better policies and get on with it and answer important questions like the one asked by that Liberal just then.
Well, to be honest, I think Angela Rayner was disgusted. Actually, I think she was disgusted. I think she thought it was misogynistic. And mark my words, we're going to see Angela Rayner, the ginger growler, as Mark Stein famously referred to her, on manoeuvres over the next few months. And just imagine the terrifying prospect of PM Rayner. I think it's coming, though. I think it's coming. Breaking right now, Gary Lineker has apologized for an anti-Semitic post on Instagram, not because he means it, but because he's desperately trying to avoid the British-bashing corporation sacking him, something that if Tim Davie, the Director General, had any balls, he would do. So let me take you through the story and the reaction to it. So Lineker posted on his Instagram story, bizarrely, this picture saying Zionism explained in less than 2 minutes, with a picture of a rat, which he would clearly have known was anti-Semitic. He deleted the post. But as Katie Hopkins pointed out, dear Gary Lineker, new case law fabricated especially for me to lawfare me out of the UK states that damage is done at the moment of publication. You are a vile little crisp salesman, Lineker. Your head comes with handles. Get someone to give it a wobble, love. And Julia Hartley Brewer added, some might say this is an image not dissimilar to that used by Germany in the 1930s. Gary Lineker, referring to the fact that, of course, he went tonto when Suella Braverman was talking, quite rightly, by the way, about the invasion of our southern border, ridiculously trying to compare her to the Nazis. On Talk Radio this morning, Jake Wallace-Simons suggested that Gary Lineker is now the Kanye West of football. We'll get analysis from Father Calvin Robertson in just one moment, but first, watch this.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he's becoming football's Kanye West.
Yes.
You know, he's only a couple of steps away, isn't he, really?
Right. He really
is. It's getting worse and worse.
And it's almost like, and this is what he did before the BBC made their decision finally to let him go. You know, he seemed to be deliberately provocative, and you wonder whether it's because he's had a couple of glasses of wine at lunch or something, I don't know. But he seems to sort of reach into his pocket every now and again and just think, let's see what happens if I do this.
Well, look, I mean, this is, you know, he is football's answer to Kanye West, I think, and he is becoming worse and worse. And we can see, I think, that what he's really doing is articulating a common view that's held by many at the BBC, and that's really the problem.
Yeah.
He feels, look, we all think this, let's just say it. And the problem is that we don't all think this, but maybe in the BBC, a lot of people do. Yeah. So he feels like he's speaking up for the majority view, which actually is a fringe minority of people who have some sympathies for, you know, that way inclined, and rather less for the Middle East soul democracy. And he feels like he's a truth teller and a freedom fighter.
Yeah, I know, which is so misguided. And that's what I mean by the problem with somebody like him, who has got, whether we like it or not, an awful lot of influence on social media.
The campaign against anti-Semitism posted, having looked the other way until now, at this point it is clear that Gary Lineker's continued association with the BBC is untenable. He must go. Mr. Lineker really has the worst luck when it comes to campaigning for his causes without aligning himself with extremists and anti-Semites. Not only does this video deliberately misrepresent Zionism, the belief that Jews have the same right to self-determination as everyone else, but it adds a rat emoji in doing so. Perhaps Mr. Lineker is not as naive or accident-prone as he might like us to believe. As the BBC's highest-paid presenter and owner of a major media enterprise, maybe he knows exactly what he's doing. We will be submitting a complaint to the BBC over this latest post. And the Tory London mayoral candidate Susan Hall added, will the BBC act as it should? I won't hold my breath. The man is a total disgrace. It seems the public is just as furious, by the way. In a poll taken by the Daily Telegraph asking should the BBC sack Gary Lineker, there are over 50,000 votes, with 89% saying yes. So now we have the non-apology from Mr. Lineker. And mark my words, the only reason we have this apology at all is because he doesn't want the indignity of having to walk out of the BBC before he gets his big final, oh, we love you on Match of the Day. So this is what he said. I take full responsibility for this mistake. That image does not reflect my views. Well, I'm sorry. Gary Lineker is a pathetic weasel. But what's even more pathetic here is the BBC allowing him to destroy their already forever tarnished reputation on the way out. His apology is meaningless. He absolutely meant what he said and did. And Tim Davie, you are a little pussy for not sacking the scumbag. Father Calvin Robinson, look, I know, actually, I mean, we've both been accused of anti-Semitism in the past, right? It's utterly ludicrous, completely ludicrous. This is a term that is sometimes thrown around willy-nilly when people are making quite appropriate questions about Israel, for example, or religion. However, no one else would get away with what Gary Lineker has got away with for so long. And I think the BBC completely undermines its own reputation for impartiality, which has been out the window for a long time, because this was the moment to actually say, you know what, enough, just go. And the fact that they didn't, the fact that they are still controlled by this guy, I think is so telling.
What he has on them, it's very strange. But then again, saying that there is an attitude at the BBC that is quite anti-Semitic. So he probably is in good company. You know, on that commentary we just heard when they said, well, he thinks everyone agrees with him. Everyone around him probably does agree with him. That image was reprehensible. He should probably apologize for it and not do it again. But I also dislike the dialogue around it. You know, that conversation we just watched, it's like, so everyone must either be a Zionist or an anti-Semite. It's like, I don't think most people are that interested in what they call the only democracy in the Middle East. Why would you care unless you're going to live in the Middle East? Like, we've got so many issues going on here at home. The fact that everyone tries to make it all about Israel, and whether you're on that side or that side, it's like, most people aren't on a side. Most people genuinely don't care. But the people that do, they go to so much extreme, like Gary Lineker. There's no need to be painting people as rats. It's obviously pointing back. Julie Hartley Brewer's right. It's obviously pointing back to propaganda from World War II, and that's disgusting. So why is he doing it?
Well, we know why he's doing it, because he does actually feel that way. I remember this is a man who advocated on the BBC in his exit interview from the BBC for the BBC to reinstall this piece of propaganda, which was an absolute journalistic disgrace, where they featured a 9-year-old boy in Gaza without telling the audience that his dad was a Hamas leader. A Hamas leader who may have been paid by the BBC to make the film. So I think what we have to realize about Gary Lineker is he's not a journalist in any way. He is a propagandist. He is now a propagandist on the hard left. I actually have no problem, Father Calvin, once he's out of the BBC. But for the moment, he is still there. He is still being paid £1.6 million of our money. Because if you watch television at all in the United Kingdom, you're meant to have the TV license. I just find it completely outrageous. And then it's like, you go off and you do your little hard left Owen Jones thing on the internet, make all of your left-wing money like Mehdi Hassan, that's fine. But I mean, we can call you out for it. We'll commentate on it. But it's the fact that he doesn't give a damn about the reputation of the BBC. And for me, I feel like the BBC is finished now. I just think it's finished.
Well, it's another reason people should stop paying their TV license. It is a teletax. It's an unjust tax. They should stop paying it. The headline of this whole thing is funny as well. Is Lineker football's Kanye West? It's like, is Kanye West even Kanye West? I think the attacks that this poor chap has taken, I think he needs a lot of support. You know, I listened to his latest song, World War III, right? I think his album is called Heil Hitler, which is just beyond, it begs belief, right? But listening to it, I actually think what he's doing here is, as a creative, he's saying, look, every time I criticize the liberal Jews who've been controlling my life and controlling my place in the industry and robbing me of my money and my children, etc., every time I criticize them, people call me a Nazi. And I think what he's saying is, so I'm going to call myself a Nazi, and then what? You've got no power over me. And he's literally just saying it now, and everyone's like, well, what can we do? I think it's his creative craziness or his creative genius. But it's a shame because, you know, one of his previous albums, Jesus is King, was one of the best albums that was released that year. It was amazing, and it was very humble, very Christ-centered, good moral values. And I think he wasn't treated very well when he came out as a Christian, by Christians as well as everyone else. And he wasn't supported and encouraged in his faith, and he's fallen away. And I think Kanye West in particular needs people praying for him. He needs people supporting him. He does have people actively working against him in his life. And I think it's silly that he's embraced the title Nazi, but I can see, after listening to the song, I can see the logic behind what he's trying to do here. He's trying to take ownership of the people that are destroying him, and say, well, you can no longer use these weapons against me.
Yeah, the problem with Kanye West, though, is that he is a privileged guy. You can't say he's not a privileged guy now. He has so much money. He has so much opportunity.
Yeah, but he lost it all. He lost all his money.
Well, he didn't really. I mean, he still has a massive fortune and he still has a massive platform. And I find it really ironic, by the way, that we have this sort of spectacle of Piers Morgan saying, well, I can interview Kanye West. I can interview him on my show, but Elon Musk must remove him from X. It's like so hypocritical. Yes, we either believe in free speech or not. So I have never for a single second called for Kanye West to be banned from anything, by the way. I think it's completely fair and fine to listen to him and to make your own decisions. I would argue that given the types of revelations we've seen from Kanye West in recent months, which also suggest things like child sex abuse, and like, this is a messed up guy. This is a very messed up, troubled guy who I think needs help. And it is very sad. I remember interviewing Kanye West years and years ago, and I loved him too. And his mother had just died. And even then he was very, very troubled. But I find it ironic. I find it very ironic that some people think that silencing him is the answer. I'm not saying silencing him is the answer, right, but I also think he needs help. And the best thing for him at the moment would be to take some time off social media. By the way, Tim Davie today also gave a landmark speech, Father Calvin, about the BBC. And again, this is one of these really meta moments where, like, the BBC is broadcasting Tim Davie's speech about the future of the BBC, where he's basically like, oh, we've got no hope, we're finished, but my solution, and this makes me sick and angry and mad, my solution is the BBC is going to try and come and take over YouTube and take over TikTok and introduce its whack verification service, BBC Verify, which is actually just another part of the state propaganda machine, into our independent platforms using our money. Watch this.
First, to make the UK a global leader in trusted information. I hope that you will all be familiar with our work in tackling the risks of disinformation, doubling down on impartiality, championing free, fair reporting alongside landmark investigative reporting, investing in BBC Verify and In-Depth, as well as increasing transparency and, frankly, holding our nerve amidst the culture wars. We believe we can go further. We want to help turn the tide by dramatically increasing our news presence on platforms like YouTube and TikTok to ensure we have a stronger position amidst the noise. We are already making progress. We are the biggest news account globally on Instagram, but we want to deploy new technology and skills.
Father Calvin, this is actually sick. Like, I know Tim Davie is this mild-mannered guy, but it's like, How the hell can he claim that the BBC is not part of the culture wars when he has his main presenter currently at the forefront of the culture wars regarding Israel and Palestine, number one? Secondly, the absolute front and arrogance to say that we need the BBC to save our independent platforms, to save YouTube, to save TikTok. Oh my God, it makes me mad. It makes me so mad. They should not be on any commercial platforms whatsoever, Father Calvin, because all they do is skew the market and they push state propaganda, and it's sick. Look at what they did during COVID.
They should choose one or the other. Either they're a state platform or they're a commercial platform. I'm happy for them to go
exactly.
commercial.
I mean, if the license fee was axed and then they wanted to do YouTube and TikTok, fine, because they'd fail, by the way. Yes. They would fail. The only reason they don't fail is because of the billions that we give them. Sorry, Calvin, I'm so worked up about this.
Absolutely. If they want to open themselves up to the free market, let the market decide, fantastic. Remove any of the state funding, remove the license fee, let them just push their content out there on commercial platforms, and they'll compete with the rest of us, and they'll probably flop. You're absolutely right, because no one likes their content anymore. But what disturbs me is when he's talking about we'll verify the truth, and we'll have a verification process of what's disinformation, misinformation, because it's all euphemisms, isn't it? It's basically saying that we'll control the narrative. And we've seen what happens when the BBC controls the narrative. It's very government-centered, it's very left-wing, and it's very anti-free speech. When he says disinformation, what he's talking about is free speech. They're going to challenge our ability to say what we think and what we feel. And that's problematic for obvious reasons, because unless you think and feel what they do, you won't get a say anymore. That's scary.
Yeah, it is. It's terrifying. And it's especially terrifying, Father Calvin, though, for people who care about the independent media, because, you know, the BBC in 2023 received £3.74 billion from the license fee alone. Now, what they can do if they come into an ecosystem like YouTube or TikTok is use that money to try and manipulate the algorithm, to try and take over, to force their content down people's throat. I think it's sick. I think it's absolutely sick. It's like, you do your thing. Do not come into our independent spaces. But they're going to try. And I think in the end, they will fail. But look, do stand by, Father Calvin Robinson. Much, much more to come, including this absolutely damning new poll about the royal family, which reveals shock new figures for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. But first, Father's Day, just around the corner. Did you remember that, by the way? And are you thinking right now, I have to buy something for my dad? Well, let me tell you, your dad does not need another coffee mug or pair of socks. It's time to give him something he'll actually use. So meet the Chairman Pro from Manscaped. It is the perfect Father's Day gift for the dad who deserves to look and feel his best. This isn't just any razor. The Chairman Pro is a high-tech, dad-approved grooming upgrade. It's an electric face shaver that can tackle up to 5 days of growth and features 2 interchangeable blade heads. Whether he's cleaning up for golf, dinner, or just another accidental nap on the recliner, make sure he does it in style. The Chairman Pro is perfect for the dad who taught you how to shave and now needs a reminder how it's really done. So have him join the over 12 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using the code Outspoken for 15% off your entire order at manscaped.com. Now, what's particularly brilliant about this product is that it has 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads. The first, the skin-safe 4-blade foil, is for that super close shave, and the skin-safe stubble trimmer is for that sophisticated 5 o'clock shadow look. Both are designed to help reduce razor burn and irritation so skin feels smooth and comfortable after every shave. Flex Adjust technology features a 360-degree contouring head and blades that flex and adjust to the contours of the face and neck, helping maintain great contact at skin at every angle. It is waterproof and it has up to 75 minutes runtime on a single charge. Manscaped also, by the way, comes with a 2-year warranty on all powered devices, which gives you peace of mind with every use. So get your dad a Father's Day gift he'll actually use and get the Chairman Pro for 15% off with code Outspoken at manscaped.com. Let me repeat, that is 15% off your entire order with the code Outspoken at Manscaped. But now, back to the show. Breaking right now. It is a popularity car crash of epic proportions. YouGov has just come out with its new statistics about the royal family, And look away right now if you happen to be named Meghan Markle or Prince Harry. The fake Duchess has just slumped to an all-time popularity low with just 20% approval. You know, that's the type of approval that Keir Starmer probably thinks is bad. And Prince Harry, the least popular he's been for 3 years. Now, it's no surprise, is it, when you think about what has gone on over the past week. We have Prince Harry revealing personal private details about his father's cancer battle in a car crash woe is me interview with the BBC. We have Meghan hosting the most embarrassing PDAs at a Beyonce concert, thanking herself on Mother's Day, and selling a whole load of tat for a lot of money. And then, perhaps most concerningly for Harry, we have a picture that I think will come to define the past 5 years, looking wired and out of sorts, wandering up and down a London street with his eyes dilated and his phone to his ear, with no security in sight. Newsweek has said that Meghan Markle's fan base has reached its smallest size ever in Britain as a result of this unfavourable score of 65%, meaning her net approval rating is now at -45. YouGov said, new YouGov data shows that favourability towards Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, is at its lowest point since it started being tracked in 2017. Following the recent failure of his protection case and subsequent interview with the BBC, Prince Harry is also seen negatively by the British public. The latest YouGov Royal Favourability Tracker poll finds that only 27% of Britons have a positive opinion of Prince Harry, with 63% having a negative view of him, his worst score since early 2023. Again, younger people feel more favourably towards the prince than older people. And by the way, Meghan has just been caught up in another plagiarism scandal, this one revealed by Michael Knowles of the Daily Wire, and we'll get to that in just one moment. But first, let me bring in Father Calvin Robinson. Father Calvin, are you at all surprised that no matter what these two try and do to turn around their latest PR disaster, the British public are just saying no, no, no?
Not surprised at all. My message has been from the very beginning that they need to take a break from public life. That would solve many of their PR disasters. Yes, their ratings are shrinking because they continue to make fumbles rather, mistakes publicly, and they're attacking people and they're looking back. Just go away from public life for a bit.
But they're not going to do that, Father Calvin, because they need money. And their money, and I think what's so unfortunate now, their money comes from a constant need and a constant desire to be in the spotlight. So, for example, Father Calvin, we saw they went to a Beyonce concert over the weekend. Now, that's fine. Royals can go to concerts. But what was so unbecoming was they decided to share to the world this sort of PDA, that stands for a public display of affection, by the way, which looked so insincere. Meghan was almost like turning her face away, and the royal grift even said that she looked a little bit repulsed. But this is just behaviour which cheapens the royal family, doesn't it? Given Harry remains fifth in line to the throne.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not the first PDA we've had, but it's not a good thing. We don't want any more of it, I would say. It looks like he's leaning away to it. None of it looks very good and natural, but yeah, we don't need to see that.
It's really interesting digging down
into something that's not true.
Yeah, it's really interesting digging down into these figures, Father Calvin, by the way, because I think what might surprise some people and will absolutely horrify Prince Harry has been the surging popularity, or it's happened over a long period of time, for Prince William. He, for the first time now, is the most popular member of the royal family. Harry always used to be more popular than him. Catherine, his wife, used to be more popular than him, and so was the late Queen Elizabeth II. But I guess people have seen, Calvin, the way that he's dealt with the past year, which means he's had to deal with all of that incoming fire from Prince Harry at the same time as his wife suffering from cancer, being a good dad, and sort of thought, actually, we quite like this guy. Do you know what I mean? I think William's reputation has almost been enhanced by what Harry has done. And there's such an irony in that, Father Calvin, because, of course, it was the opposite of what Harry wanted. Harry thought Spare, his tell-all autobiography, which presented William as a bully and someone who was physically violent and someone who was unkind and disloyal, he thought that was going to damage Prince William's popularity. Well, at least in the UK, it's had the opposite effect.
Self-awareness. In Spare, Harry comes across as a snivelling, entitled brat, and so people find empathy with the person he thinks is the antagonist, but actually I think William comes across as the protagonist, which of course he is. He is direct heir to the throne, and he is the star of the story. He is the main character. As much as Harry wants to be the main character, he will never be. He is a backup character, and that's, I suppose, where the title comes from, but that's what he has to come to grips with, really.
The thing is, Father Calvin, the fall of Prince Harry will go down in history. I mean, this will be studied, right, across the ages, because he used to sit above where William sits now on this table. He was actually even more popular at times with the British public than the late Queen herself. And now, if we go back to that table again, he sits as the third least popular royal, far less popular than even Princess Beatrice, Princess Eugenie, and Camilla. But what's so critical with Beatrice and Eugenie, for example, and even Camilla, there's just people sort of shrugging their shoulders. They don't really dislike them. They just don't really know them. Whereas with Harry, it's so baked in now, a negative rating of 63% from the British public, with only a 27% unfavorably. And of course, it's only his wife and Prince Andrew, for very obvious reasons, even though I have some of my own views on that, which it's not the time for now. Yeah. But it's just a I guess it's a historic fall from grace. Probably the only royal who has had a similar fall from grace is the king, who abdicated and became the Duke of Windsor as a result of Wallis Simpson.
Yeah. What this shows is that these things can change. He does have time to turn it around. If he stops publishing things and talking about his family, if he moves back to the UK and apologizes to his family and just toes the line for a while, people could come to like him again. I remember when he was younger, like, we always used to think he was a lad. Like, he was someone you'd want to have a pint with, someone who seemed quite funny. But then he started taking himself far too seriously, developed a victimhood complex, and married a succubus. And so, of course, people are turning against him. But I think it's because, mostly, of her. And if he returns to his family, that might change back.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think there'd have to be a heck of a lot of grovelling. A heck of a lot of grovelling. Now, Father Calvin, Meghan Markle recently did her first podcast interview with Jamie Kern-Lima, and it was car crash for so many levels. People can go back and watch my full takedown of the whole thing on YouTube. But there was one particular moment from the interview involving the word yet, which has gone viral for all the wrong reasons, especially amongst the American online right, like End Wokeness on X, which posted this.
I don't know what I'm doing yet. My business hasn't gotten traction yet. No one's picked up my book proposal yet.
Yes.
I haven't found my soulmate yet. Everything is yet.
The power of yet.
The power of yet.
Are you wanting to kill me for showing you that yet, Father Calvin?
Why do you always do this to me?
Are you inspired?
Not yet.
Well, Michael Knowles from the Daily Wire was doing a bit of investigation into that clip after it went viral and had an astonishing discovery. Watch.
Yet again, I want to gouge out my ears while Meghan Markle is speaking. The power of yet. Let's be as fair as we can. She's proposing an idea, the power of yet, which is just a kind of blind optimism that things will turn around. Even if one's life is not progressing as one would like, it'll just turn around as long as we just keep thinking positively. The power of yet. That's at least a marketable phrase, right? That phrase is not even Meghan Markle's own phrase. That phrase comes from a 2014 TED Talk by some lady named Carol Dweck.
And what I love about Michael Knowles is he's brought the receipts, right? Watch.
Instead of luxuriating in the power of yet, they were gripped in the tyranny of now.
So it's not an original idea. She just ripped off this phrase from this lady, Carol Dweck. It wasn't particularly interesting when Carol Dweck said it 11 years ago. And one does not need to knock Meghan Markle for not having an original idea. No one pretty much has an original idea. But the ideas that she is then promoting are not even great ideas. It'd be one thing if she went on some podcast and said, well, here's what Aristotle had to say about something. Oh, here's a really interesting line from Euripides. I don't know. Something that stood the test of time. No. She's ripping off really shallow ideas from shallow self-help YouTube videos. Why? Why does this woman have a podcast? Why does she have a show? Why? The power... these women, these people should not have shows. And yet they do, and that's an injustice. And the only way that I will be able to console myself is with the power of yet. That their shows haven't been canceled yet. Meghan Markle has not been silenced in public life yet.
I mean, look, he has a very fair point, but I mean, the plagiarism is quite astonishing, Father Coven, because it really does feel like this woman doesn't have an original idea in her head. She ripped off With Love, Meghan, the Netflix series, from Pamela Anderson. She ripped off the title of her new podcast, Confessions of a Female Founder, from a young Irish influencer. And even the concepts that she pushes as her own have been taken from someone else.
You know what? I don't even care about the plagiarism. I just can't stand how she thinks everything she says is so profound. It's so surface level. It's so dull. It's so empty. It's like the power of... There's no power in yet. You might as well just put ... put ellipse at the end. It means nothing. It's empty. And she says it like it's the most profound thing we're hearing today.
Yeah. It definitely isn't. It definitely isn't. Now, Father Calvin, I have to ask you about the New York Times. We know they're on the hard left these days. We know that they hate anything connected to the United Kingdom or England, certainly our royal family. But why do they continue to effectively act as propagandists for Prince Harry and Meghan? And I ask as a result of this new feature that they've written where they blame King Charles for the row with Harry. They brand Prince William as work shy. And I think what's most shocking is they actually say that Charles's entire reign is going to be a failure unless he actually resolves things with his son. And I disagree with that. I don't think he does have to resolve them. And what I also find really interesting is that this is just the New York Times as ever working on behalf of Prince Harry and Meghan, because you'll remember they have a close relationship with the newspaper. Meghan granted them her only newspaper interview for the launch of With Love, Meghan, to the food section. She's previously written about her miscarriage with them, etc., etc., etc. Why does the New York Times get it so wrong when it comes to Britain, and especially reporting on our royal family?
That's fascinating, the idea that for the king to succeed, he would have to make it up with Harry. I think it's the exact opposite. For the king to succeed, he needs to cut all ties with Harry and probably strip him of his title or something. It's insane that the New York Times seems to have the opposite of what's going on in the minds of British people. I suppose they're not touch with British people. They have no connection. And you're right, it's just a propagandist arm. Why is their connection so tight with the Markles? I'm not sure. I don't know what's going on there. But who gains from this? I suppose they do, because they get better exclusives from Meghan and Harry. And so as long as they continue peddling their propaganda, they'll have that relationship. But do people even buy the New York Times anymore?
No, of course they don't, and nor should you. I mean, they're completely irrelevant. What is interesting, though, Father Calvin, is did you see this? Even some of the, I guess, woke institutions are now turning very much on Meghan and Harry. We saw it happen with South Park, remember, months and months ago. But until now, Saturday Night Live, SNL, which still does remain an institution amongst a particular group of Americans. I mean, it's very woke. It's very anti-Republican. It's not something I would ever choose to watch. Yeah, and it's crap, isn't it? It's sort of, yeah. That's a whole other story. But they finally made a joke, a good joke, actually, at the expense of Harry and Meghan during the Weekend Update. Watch.
President Trump also announced a new trade deal with the UK that will reopen British markets for American companies. All that Britain demands in return is that we keep these two.
I mean, it's not a bad joke. You could argue they're doing it 2 or 3 years too late, but still a significant moment, because do you remember when South Park turned on Harry and Meghan? It was like, oh, whoa, like something's changing in the American zeitgeist, the American culture. You're there, Father Calvin. Do you pick it up?
Yeah, I never hear people talking positively about them. People only ask, like, what is their deal? Like, why are they like this? I don't know. I don't know what's going on with them. But I don't hear much support from the people I'm around, but that doesn't mean anything, because I don't tend to hang around with crazy liberals. So.
Yeah, very true. You hang around with sound people who, I guess look, Harry and Meghan give us a bit of entertainment, right? Like, maybe that is what their purpose is for now.
The court jesters.
Yes, exactly. The court jesters, the royal equivalent of the village idiots. Father Calvin Robinson, so brilliant to have you. Just a final word, Father Calvin, from you. You had some big news this week. Congratulations. Things in your life returning to a little bit of calm?
As calm as my life ever gets.
Which is not very. So what's happened? Fill us in. What's happened?
But I'm back in the church.
Amazing.
You can see, I'm here, back at St. Paul's. We're back to having our services, regular services, Sunday morning, 10 a.m. You're all welcome. St. Paul's, Grand Rapids. They left the Anglican Catholic Church. I followed them, and we are just blessing and thanking God. So that's it, really.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that, Father Calvin Robinson. Very, very happy to hear it, because it's been a very stressful few weeks for you, and it's so brilliant to have had you today. We will speak next week. Father Calvin, thank you so much. Now, let me get to your comments today. Let me just go in and I will find them. Here we go. Harry 2.0 says, people who say we don't have enough time to form a party. Sorry, but 2029 is a long time away. So this is on the whole Rupert Lowe thing. I think that's a really interesting point, Harry 2.0, because a lot of people do say that. But if the public are angry enough, things can happen quickly. Like, it's not that I agree with Macron or think he's been a success at all, but it was only about a year before he ended up as president that party was formed. John B says they need to stop talking about a new party, though, and get one going very quickly. Simon Brandy. Oh, this is interesting, Simon Brandy, because I think this is how Rupert Lowe actually feels himself. He writes, I feel Zia Yusuf is a bit of a scapegoat. Ultimately, Nigel will be behind the complaint. Zia has impressed me in interviews, Nigel hasn't. I'm on Rupert's side, but this whiffs of Nigel. And that is what some people have said to me. Dan, of course, Rupert, he knew, and Zia Yusuf is going to be thrown under the bus. But I have a lot of issues with the way Zia Yusuf has acted. And Simon Brandy adds, this is all because of Nigel's ego. Elon Musk's criticism of Farage set the ball rolling. Zia is not the main villain, guys. Don't fall for the scapegoat. Maeve says, you're so right about reform support, Dan. Here in Cornwall, Matt Goodwin came and spoke for reform at the conference while saying from the podium he wasn't a member. Confusing. So it is all very confusing. But a programming note, I'm very pleased to announce Rupert Lowe will be here tomorrow on Outspoken, responding himself, which I cannot wait for. Greatest Britain Union Jackass. Time now, though. Your nominees today: Gary Lineker, nominated by Karen Hankey for his anti-Semitic Instagram post; Marina Purkis, nominated by The Grift Report for saying quite a lot of people are happy with immigration and that they don't mind; and the aforementioned Zia Yusuf, nominated by Civil Defence UK 1, because there are big questions to answer for Zia after Rupert Lowe was found guilty of nothing as the CPS drops its case altogether. Okay, let me get to the votes. And it was a two-horse race today. Just 5% of you going for Marina Purkis. The runner-up with 39% of your vote, Gary Lineker. But this is interesting. 55% of you saying that Reform UK chairman Zia Yusuf is today's Union Jackass. And the Greatest Britain is Rupert Lowe, nominated by Julie Ann Lowe for being dragged through hell by Nigel and Zia for doing nothing. And a reminder, Rupert Lowe will be here tomorrow, but of course, my open invitation to Zia Yusuf remains. Now, coming up in the Uncancelled After Show on Substack, Lady Colin Campbell is unleashed on all the royal news, including that New York Times attack on King Charles and Prince William. So at this stage, we're going to come off YouTube and Rumble. I know you love Lady Colin Campbell, so come and join us, www.outspoken.live. We are back tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hit subscribe right now on YouTube and Rumble, turn on the notification bell, and most importantly, I promise to keep